Hey guys, Victoria Paxton here. Thanks for stopping back by my YouTube channel. Merry Christmas, guys. Baking spirits, right? Merry Christmas. Wait, here. Can you see them? No. Wrong way. Merry Christmas. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about George Stinney Jr. Okay, you know I have to start every video with everything encompassing this video belongs to me. This is my connections with spirit. If anybody chooses to steal this, like has happened in the past, I will be forced to do something like, you know, with an attorney and all that fun stuff. So don't copy my stuff, okay? Okay, here we go, you guys. First off, forgive the appearance, the hair. Didn't feel like messing with it, okay? It's been a long week, y'all. Okay, so I'm gonna start this a little bit differently than normal, okay? Normally, you know, we talk about who we're gonna talk about. So I wanna first talk about Emmitt Till. In 1955, he was 14 years old when he was abducted, tortured, and lynched in Mississippi after being accused of offending a white woman named Carolyn Bryant in her family's grocery store. The brutality of his murder and the fact that his killers were acquitted drew attention to the long history of violent persecution of African Americans in the United States. Till posthumously became an icon of the civil rights movement. So when I was doing the food pantry, I was working with this gentleman who was Emmitt Till's cousin. I learned so much from this man, okay? He was telling me the story of being a child and remembering that his cousin went missing, Emmitt Till went missing. And then he has, unfortunately, very vivid memories of going to his cousin Emmett's funeral. And Emmett's mother insisted on having an open casket because she said, everybody needs to see what was done to my son, right? Of course, his body was bloated, and anyway, his cousin Tommy told me that story and said, like, you know, in all of his memories he has of being a child, that was like one of the hardest memories he had. Excuse me. And he said, you know, to see his aunt and uncle crying, you know, and just a room full of people crying, when in fact Emmitt Till did not offend this young lady. She lied. So his horrific murder was for naught. I wanted to start out with this because, you know, I think my friend Tommy explaining about the funeral and, you know, his memories as a child of that, it just really stuck with me. Like, that's something I'm never gonna forget. You know, I learned a lot from that man. He was an amazing human being. But this video, there's 3 victims in this video, okay? There's Betty June Bannister, who was 11 years old, Mary Emma Thames, who was 7 years old, and George Stinney Jr., who was 14 years old. And unfortunately, it's a horrible case, you guys. Like, so a subscriber of mine sent me an article on this case, and before I even clicked on it, I was immediately seeing some things. So, all right, let's start talking about this. Betty June Bannister was 11. Mary Emma Thames was 7. They were 2 white girls who rode their bike on March 11th, 1944, looking for flowers in Alcolu, South Carolina. While on their journey, it's reported that the 2 girls stopped at 2 different locations to find more flowers. One location was rumored to be a prominent white family home, and the other allegedly confirmed being the home where George Stinney Jr., age 14, lived, where his family lived. He was born in Pinewood, South Carolina originally. George and his sister were outside when the 2 girls stopped to ask them where they could find maypops. This was the last time the girls were seen. After the two girls didn't come home that night, hundreds of Alcula residents went looking for them. George Stinney Sr. was among the residents who searched for the two girls. A day later, they found the two girls' dead bodies in a murky ditch. According to the medical examiner, Dr. Asbury Cecil Bogard, there was no clear sign of a struggle. However, both girls died from violent trauma to their heads. Thames had a hole that went straight through her forehead and into her skull. She also had a 2-inch long cut above her right eyebrow. Bannister had at least 7 blows to the back of her head, which resulted in her skull being crushed. It was noted on the record of death that the back of her skull was nothing but a mass of crushed bones. The death conclusion by Bogard is that the two girls likely died from wounds caused by a round instrument about the size of a head hammer. Once the Clarendon County law enforcement learned that the two girls spoke with Stinnett Jr. that day, as told by a witness, they quickly went to place him in handcuffs for interrogation. Stinney Jr. was 14 at the time that he was interrogated for hours without his parents, without a witness or a lawyer. Law enforcement claimed that during the interrogation that Stinney confessed to killing the two girls because he wanted to have sex with one of them and his attempt failed. Oh my God. The arresting officer, H.S. Newman, wrote in a handwritten statement, "I arrested a boy named George Stinney. He then made a confession and told me where to find a piece of iron about 15 inches long. He said he put it in a ditch about 6 feet from the bicycle." Newman wouldn't tell where he detained Stinney Jr. due to threats of people wanting to lynch the boy. His own parents didn't get to speak to him nor have any idea where their child was located. George Stinney Jr. was in custody for a little over 2 months before his 2-hour trial took place. 2 hours. 2 hours. Another boy was arrested with them and was his cellmate. He recalled Stinney proclaiming his innocence but said he was forced to confess. Stinney was represented by a court-appointed attorney named Charles Plowden at the Clarendon County Courthouse. 2 white men who searched for the two girls testified. The cellmate also testified. Stinney Jr. was sentenced in less than a day by an all-white jury. Yeah, okay, saw that one coming. Plowden did little to call witnesses or present evidence to clear Stinney Jr. of the alleged murders. His parents also didn't get to go to the trial because they were afraid that they would be attacked by a white mob. You guys. After the jury deliberated for 10 minutes, they found Stinney Jr. guilty of murder with no mercy. He was sentenced to execution by electrocution on April 24th of 1944. South Carolina organizers, both white and black ministerial unions, protested the execution. They petitioned the governor at the time, Olin Johnson, to grant Stinney Jr. clemency based on his young age. Hundreds of letters and telegrams were also sent to the governor's office begging them to show mercy, but their cries fell on deaf ears. It was so sad. George Stinney Jr. held his Bible under his arm on June 16th of 1944 as he was escorted to the execution chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary in Columbia. The 95-pound 14-year-old was placed on the adult electric chair. The state electrician had a hard time trying to strap him into the chair, adjust the electrode on his leg, and place the oversized mask over his face. 2,400 volts of electricity surged through his body when the switch was turned on. The mask fell off while his eyes were big and teary. Saliva dripped from his mouth as they placed the mask back on and sent 2 more jolts of 2,400 volts through his body. Once the shock was applied, he did not die instantly, as the execution was supposed to take place, but after 8 long torturing minutes of being electrified. Okay, you guys, this article that I took this from, I don't know who wrote it, maybe like a 2nd grader. It was horrible. So the volt of electricity was so powerful that it burned the bag that they placed over his face. The lowered bag revealed his burned face. It's rumored that at that point, one of the officers who was in attendance pulled out his gun and shot Stinney Jr. in the head to spare him any more suffering. He was then pronounced dead shortly after. It only took 83 days total for the 14-year-old to be charged, tried, convicted, and executed by the state. What the hell? 70 years later, in 2014, George Stinney Jr.'s murder conviction was thrown out, thankfully. It's a little late, though. His siblings testified that his confession was coerced and that he had an alibi at the time of the murders. His sister, Amy, said that he and her were watching the family's cows during that time. Judge Carmen T. Mullen vacated Stinney Jr.'s murder conviction after months of consideration. She called the death sentence a great and fundamental injustice. This is, you guys, this is so damn sad. Like, okay. So let me start by saying that before I even clicked on the article that the gentleman sent me, I saw a middle-aged white man. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind. So I attempted to connect with George. I was able to connect with him. He came through looking as I envisioned he looked back then. He was very shy, quiet, reserved, and he immediately came through and said, I didn't do nothing to those two girls. And I said, everybody knows you didn't do it. Everybody freaking knows you didn't do it, you know? Yeah. He went on to share a few terrible things that he had to endure while in jail, which he was 14. He was 95 pounds. He was a little teeny petite child. Do you hear me? Child. He was 14. Like, so I then wanted to try to connect with Betty and Mary, okay? I was able to connect with Mary. She came through. She was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I've explained this before. A lot of times they come through at a time when they were the happiest, okay? So, you know, it's different when you talk to a child spirit, right? So I was like, you know, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I just want to know what happened at the end, you know. And she said, I don't want to talk about that. I don't like to talk about that. And I said, I totally understand. Can I just ask you one question? And she said, yes. I said, did you know the man? And she said, yes. She shook her head. She was like, yes. I said, do you know his name? And she was like, no. So they knew the guy that did this. The other thing is, if in fact this was like a ball peen hammer that they were, the way they were killed, George Stinney Jr. was 95 pounds. He was a little petite thing. You would have to have so much force to do the damage that was done on the back of these babies' heads, right? Okay. So let me just say this. I had a dream last night and I kept getting Frank, but I was also getting Franklin. So is it possible this middle-aged white man that I saw in my vision and that I saw in my dream last night, is his name Frank or Franklin? And I was also getting the name Grady. Very, like, crystal clear. Okay, Grady. I don't know if there were 2 men involved. I kept seeing the same middle-aged white guy. You guys, I know this is just, I don't normally, I have 300 names on my list, okay? But when the subscriber sent me the story about this and I started seeing things right away, I was like, I gotta bump this up. I just had to, you know? This is so pathetic, you guys. I know as a society we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. You know, there's still, unfortunately, so much racism in this country, in this world. I can't even imagine, like, I can't imagine living back during these times. You know what I mean? Because I've always been the same. I don't give a crap what color you are. If you're a piece of crap, you're a piece of crap regardless of your color, right? If you're a good person, I don't care what color you are, you're a good person. You know, so I can't even imagine, like, having to live through this, right? And as I was saying before about my friend Tommy, you know, dealing with his cousin being murdered so savagely. And, you know, these two cases, like, I feel like they're so parallel with one another, you know, same type of situation. This poor little George Stinney Jr. minding his own damn business, and he ends up being murdered, you know. Granted, his was an electric chair, whereas Emmitt Till's was at the hands of a bunch of morons. But the bottom line is, you guys, we just need to keep changing and keep advancing when it comes to racism, because it's too much, guys. It's just too much. So, okay. Be nice, be kind, stay safe, stay healthy. And I hope everybody's doing great. And don't forget to tune in on my YouTube channel on Friday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Friday Night Live. We have a great group of women, primarily women. Sometimes we have a couple gentlemen, but we have a great group of people there. So supportive and awesome. And we just hang out, shoot the shit, and have a great time. So that about does it for me. Bye, guys.